Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Today we'll be taking a look at some of the class changes for PTR patch 9.1. In this video, I primarily want to focus on the PvE side of things and class changes, some legendary changes for sure, but these are the patch notes that Blizzard released themselves on the class tuning. This isn't a PvP side or a conduit side or particularly a legendary video, but rather taking a look at some of the spec-specific things that Blizzard is doing and some of the massive nerfs that are coming out. In Shadowlands right now, we have really strong range classes, and it looks like Blizzard is going to be nerfing some of those range classes in patch 9.1. But this is PTR, it's not a final list, this is just a testing phase, and this is just a first set of nerfs which could disappear the next day or the next week, as there's constantly ever-shifting changes on PTR. If you guys do enjoy this video, give it a like. Let me know in comments below if you like these changes, if you don't like these changes, as YouTube interaction is just the biggest thing right now. So I really would appreciate it if you did enjoy it. Let me know in the comments below. But anyway, let's get into the actual class changes and how it might impact the meta going forward. I'm mostly a melee class player, so don't expect any kind of crazy range gameplay out of me. I'm not super great at ranged, but we're going to take a look at these updates either way. Starting off with balance druids. The first change is going to be to New Moon, and this whole row is getting a bit of a balance in here. New Moon is getting buffed where it has a 20-second recharge instead of 25. And while Full Moon drops as a convoking druid is super enjoyable, I don't know if druids like Full Moon enough to go in the New Moon talent. It's a hard-hitting ability, sure, but not enough to go New Moon. But the word changes to the talent of Solstice, which is the strongest talent in a row. Solstice has gotten changed so your shooting stars fall 200% more often when the talent triggers instead of 300%. Your shooting stars used to be a talent in Battle for Azeroth on the same row, but now shooting stars got baked into the playstyle where Moonfire and Sunfire damage over time abilities has a chance to call down a star, doing a bit of astral damage, but also generating your resources. So whenever you got from one eclipse to the next, Solstice would activate, making those stars fall more often, doing extra damage, but also giving you extra resources for more starfalls or more star surges. This change does try to nerf the strongest talent in a row, and if you look at Boomy performance in Raid, most Boomies take Solstice. There are only a few situations where you take Fury of Elune and even less for New Moon. I don't think this is enough to make New Moon good. I think they would have to reduce down to maybe 10-second recharge to really make New Moon a lot stronger. They need to do a lot more. I don't know if this will be enough though to let Boomies not take Solstice. Potentially, back in the alpha and beta, the early version, players were trying out Fury of Elune, and then we're getting some success with it, mostly with the Boat Slugger, which also took a bit of a nerf. We'll talk about it in a second. Maybe this could allow Fury of Elune to come back out of nowhere, just really swinging for the fences, as it could potentially be okay for Boomy playstyle, maybe a bit better than Solstice, but it's hard to imagine people dropping Solstice off the bat. It'll still most likely be a strong option. Usually that's how it is for all the patches. Usually buffing talents, you need to make a pretty significant buff in order to really change the shakeup in this role. But we'll have to wait and see what Boomies try. This is the early version of PTR. It will be interesting to see if people end up playing other things besides Solstice. Next, Stellar Drift. This got nerfed, so the changes are, it no longer extends the duration of your shooting star or your starfall. It only buffs the damage by more though. So normally on live, Stellar Drift buffs the damage ability by 15%. This one buffs it by 25, so 10% damage increase. However, it now gives your starfall a cap, as in a cooldown cap. I'm gonna go into Boomy form and let me build some resources. When I use starfall, it will have a cooldown, which feels really weird. You still can cast while moving. It does 25% more damage, so maybe there's an argument for like now starfall is more of a bursty AoE ability. Like it doesn't do that bad of damn. Right? It does kind of okay in terms of the damage it does do, but it kills a very fun playstyle. So the fun playstyle I'm talking about is the Boomy playstyle of just being able to dot things, get all your dots rolling on literally everything inside of a dungeon. You go into an eclipse, you have a bunch of stars falling with Solstice, and you're just running around, casting spells, maintaining your starfall basically infinitely. And now you can't do that anymore. So that fun playstyle, just running around, letting stars fall, it's just kind of gone. It is going to be a nerf to the AoE damage, but also it's a nerf to the fun playstyle of just running around and casting starfall while casting literally everything. It's fun for multiple reasons. One, you can avoid all the mechanics. Second, if you have enough targets that are dotted, that's constant resource for you to generate. You generate so much of that resource, you can even go for star surges here and there. Like, it's really, really strong, but it's also really, really fun. So I think that's what Blizzard is trying to do, is try to cap this a bit by nerfing it. Most likely, you're going to run Twin Moons. Your playstyle won't change. You'll still be able to do quite a bit of that, you know, if you want to keep constant starfalls on enemies. We're just going to go into an Eclipse, 2 Wraths, just to make sure we get Solstice rolling. And you can maintain Starfall constantly. The only difference is you don't have nearly as much fun just running around like an idiot casting spells the whole time. So you will still be able to have good pressure, and as a Boomy, if you enjoy the ability to just damage enemies constantly while maintaining your dots and having to refresh them from time to time, it still is a powerful playstyle, and you'll still be able to dish out quite a bit of damage, I believe. But running around and doing extra damage and being able to weave in star surges in between, I think will become a little bit harder. You'll be more focused on just maintaining Starfall in a pure AoE situation, which again is also a cap. It is a nerf to the AoE potential of druids. There is a legendary interaction though for this talent with Stellar Drift. If you are playing, and there's not a lot of talents that Boomies really play outside of boats with Bounce of All Things, but if you're playing Oneth Clear Vision and you get a proc for a Starfall, it ignores the cooldown that Stellar Drift applies. So potentially maybe Boomies will try out that legendary combo to have stronger Starfalls if you're lucky enough to just get procs back to back. Maybe that could be really strong in AoE, but we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Best Lego for Boomies also got a nerf. Bounce of All Things now gives you only extra crit up to only 24% instead of 40, decreasing by 3% every 1 second. So you get a lot less crit. Normally, Boomies are able to stack, I believe it's a lot of mastery, versatility, maybe a little bit of haste, and not really stack heavily into crit, but with this change, you might have to not ignore crit nearly as much as a stat. This could nerf this legendary to be less good, but it is pretty ahead compared to the other Legos in the current Sims for Boomies. Maybe this will adjust it enough where it's not a good Lego anymore and you just throw it out, never use it again. But yeah, this is quite a nerf altogether. It's gonna shake things up for sure. I wonder if Primordial or Arcanic Pulsar Lego could be more competitive with this change to Bounce of All Things. Maybe you would end up playing like playstyle where you're all around Incarnation now as a Boomkin. I don't know if people love this playstyle or not. I know that CA has been the meta so far with Star-Lord for single target or Soul of the Forest in AoE, but Incarnation potentially could come back together with this Lego combo. At the very beginning of the expansion, people were like either Primordial could be good or Bounce of All Things, at least from recommendations from people that play Boomkin that I talked to. But Bounce of All Things just kind of took off, and maybe with this change, it would be enough to nerf it. I doubt it. Some of these nerfs sometimes are enough to just tone down the effectiveness of a class, but not enough to really change the meta. And I wonder if this is going to be another one of those patches, or at least this change in particular to Boomies is going to be one of that variety. The next change is going to be to Fire Mages, and it looks like Blizzard is trying to tackle their AoE damage and even single target damage. I talked to a couple of guys and they said that for single target, it looks like overall an 8% nerf on single target, probably even more impactful when it comes to AoE. So first of all, Flame Strike damage has been reduced by 10%. Flame Strike is a big core component of you doing AoE damage in the first place. And part of it also is Flame Patch, which also got a nerf. So both Flame Strike and Flame Patch got nerfed by 10%. This overall, I don't think is going to be enough to kill Fire Mage AoE capabilities, but they're really strong in AoE, and they definitely make certain trash pulls much easier because of the damage they do. But Flame Strike Patch and the actual Flame Patch and Flame Strike nerf together, it is a bit of nerf. It is a little bit of a nerf, to say the least. So maybe the AoE damage and the consistency of that AoE output definitely is going to see a hit. I wonder if gear and better gear from the new raid might be able to offset this a little bit. Next thing that got nerfed, and this is a kind of a big one. I'm not a Night Fae on this mage, so it's not like something I can really test right now. And right now, it's not really easy to change to a Fae or to a Kyrian Covenant right now. But Kindling got nerfed. Your Fireball, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, and Phoenix Flames critical strikes reduce the remaining cooldown of your combustion by 1 second. This goes from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. So essentially, every time you cast one of those abilities and they crit, you're losing half a second on that CDR. Maybe as a Night Fae, you can still do every minute combustion, but it is going to be a little bit slower. It might maybe get mages to want to stack more haste into their gear so you can get more fire blast in order to supplement this change, but this could shake up the meta because mages have been playing the minute combustion. So the question is, with a fully geared mage in the next tier with the next gear, are you still able to maintain that 1 minute combustion? If yes, you'll still have decent damage and you'll still have that minute drop of just big burst. Even though the burst is getting nerfed on the AoE front, but still it could be pretty good. Or are we walking towards a more Meteor playstyle from this? Because Meteor used to be really good back in the day. The minute mage is really, really strong, but maybe we're walking back to that 2 minute mage with Meteor in between, big burst every 2 minutes, but it's definitely gonna be an impact in terms of how we play fire mages in the future. But also, Infernal Cascade Conduit got nerfed by 20%. Infernal Cascade Conduit is the conduit that reads, and I don't have it on this mage since this guy is a freshie. While combustion is active, your fire blast grants you, baseline, 9% increased fire damage for 5 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. So that's on 145 item level, and I believe at 184 item level it's like an 11% extra fire damage. So 2 fire blasts give you even more damage. That means with the nerf to this conduit that's used in single target, this is a nerf to single target as well as AoE. Maybe for AoE, you might be able to run Master Flame Conduit, since you'll have a much larger conduit or soul binds to work with in 9.1. You'll be able to add that extra, the Master of Flame Conduit, into your setup to kind of offset some of the nerfs to Flame Strike and Flame Patch. But we'll have to wait and see. You know, we'll just have to try it out and get some dungeons ran. Maybe once the new Korthia dungeon is available, more people will be able to give it a try, see how classes are performing, get some sims, get some logs, get some data. But this overall looks like a nerf to mages. On the Flame Strike AoE side, which they're pretty good at when it comes to dungeons, but also an overall output for single target play. So this is looking like a bit of a nerf for the spec. It's a little bit unfortunate, but again, another nerf in the books for Blizzard. I don't really know if this change is going to be enough to just kill off fire mages. I mean, off the bat, people are saying, oh wow, mages are getting nerfed, go in Frost, go in Arcade. But maybe once the patch comes out and once mages gear up a little with the new gear from the new raid, they might still be really good. One of the things that allows mages to be good right now, even though Arcane is pretty good for Castlanathria, Frost can be really good in Castlanathria, Fire just was always more practical. Being able to use that combustion while progging through Kael'thas to burn the shield, or burn down the Azure and SLG, or having that crazy good consistency to take out the adds in the Nathria's phase, it's really practical and it's really, really good. But maybe as people are getting more comfortable with Arcane and Frost, they're finding ways to play the specs better and try to find ways to use them inside of those fights as well. And with the nerfs to Fire, it could signal a meta change of, you know, specs rotation. I doubt it though, because Fire has been so good this expansion so far. And maybe with better gear, it'll offset a lot of the nerfs that are coming out as well. But again, time will tell. Next, we have some nerfs and buffs to Priests. So we're going to start with the nerfs. Disc Priests are really strong in the game. One of the things that makes Disc Priest really good, at least for the rating, is Spirit Shell. Spirit Shell replaces your Rapture, where Rapture normally is a 1.5 minute CD, where it immediately grants a shield to an ally and buffs the next few shields you get. It allows you to spam out shields on allies and not apply the debuff of Weaken Soul, so you can kind of spam a tank with a shield as they're taking big damage in the key. Or you can use it to put a bunch of bubbles on allies and put atonements around and get your big atonement set up. Spirit Shell kind of replaces that playstyle where now you're able to provide a shield based on everybody who has atonements, doing a bunch of damage, generating a shield for your raid. It's huge, and our priests basically describe themselves in our raid as they are Spirit Shell bots. They don't do anything for a minute until Spirit Shell is back up, and you basically are only affected because of Spirit Shell. But Spirit Shell is now going to have a 90-second cooldown instead of 60. If my guildies are right and they're literally a Spirit Shell bot, this is a pretty big nerf to Disc Priests in general. Normally Blizzard tackles Disc Priests by nerfing their damage every single patch like they did in BFA, but still Disc Priests are really good inside of raids, pretty decent in dungeons. I think addition of PI really does help them to be a lot better in group content as well, because PI is just huge. Spirit Shell is a pretty big component of Disc, and having a no longer cooldown is an obvious nerf to Disc. I don't know how massive is it going to be. I still think every raid is going to have a Disc Priest, but maybe not stacking Disc Priest. Maybe we'll just have one Disc Priest, and you'll have to plan around your cooldowns or raid cooldowns a little bit better, with Spirit Shell having that 30-second extra wait time on it. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe this is gonna get more priests to want to go Night Phase so they can get Spiritual back quicker. I think it could be. Maybe that's what Blizzard is trying to do. Because if you go Night Phase, you will reduce the cooldown of Spirit Shell. Or not? Maybe not. But we'll have to wait and see. I don't really know if Night Phase does reduce Spirit Shell. It'd be hilarious if it did. And if it does, maybe Night Phase Disc Priest will be a thing. Because you'll be able to get this back as a faster CD, potentially. And then we have a Holy Priest buff. Now this one isn't like a guaranteed big button buff, but it is a buff regardless. It's a buff to your ability, Symbols of Hope. Symbols of Hope normally is an ability you use to regen mana for your allies, but they added an extra component to it in 9.1. Bolster the morale of your raid members within 40 yards. They each recover 60 seconds of a cooldown of a major defensive ability, and regain 12% of the missing mana over 4.5 seconds. So it still has this mana regen effect, but now it gives you a defensive back, a 1 whole minute back faster. Now, which defensive is it? It's a good question. So as a priest right here, I have Guardian Spirit, I have Divine Hymn, I have Desperate Prayer. So when I use this ability, these are a whole bunch of different defenses I have. Use it. And it looks like your Desperate Prayer gets a pretty big CDR to it. So the defenses that it tracks and defenses that it prioritizes are personals. Like anti-magic shell for Death Knights, for example. I imagine maybe Cloak of Shadows for rogues, or evasion, maybe both Cloak of Shadows and evasion, or one of them that's on CD. As you saw, Desperate Prayer for priests. I imagine maybe like Shield of Vengeance for Retribution Paladins, Dab of the Sword for Arms Warriors, Turtle for Hunters, Iceblock for Mages. So it's a defensive that it prioritizes. We don't really know exactly each defensive that it has. I don't think anyone cataloged this yet, and I haven't taken the time to test it. But while this isn't raid utility, imagine like if a Death Knight could get their anti-magic zone back faster, or you can get Rallying Cry faster. This would be insane. But still, I think it does allow some opportunity for Holy Priest to bring someone to the raid. Having a personal defensive for certain fight mechanics can be actually huge. And being able to get those defenses back quicker, together with the mana, could potentially be really good inside of the raid tier. I'm not saying that this is going to make Holy Priest all of a sudden really, really good, but with a cooldown reduction aspect to a defensive, especially for tanks, like imagine if a warrior could have shield wall back quicker, or if a Blood DK could get Vampiric, maybe for Blood DK is going to be AMS again, which is still good, but it's most, what if it was someone like Vampiric Embrace? No, Vampiric Embrace is Shadow Priest. No, Vamp Blood. What if it was Vamp Blood, or Argent Defender for Prot, or Demon Hunters? What would they actually get? I guess they would have the brand, wouldn't they? Like a defensive for a tank could be huge. A defensive for a healer could also be huge. Defensive for a DPS, so they have an extra personal for themselves during the fight, could be huge. I'm not saying it's gonna be, but this is a really interesting change. I don't like where they're going with it. It's hard to tell how good it's going to be, but I like it. Just like Boomkins, Warlocks are getting a bit of a nerf, primarily the Affliction Warlocks. So their changes are pretty simple to explain compared to Boomies. Malefic Rapture damage has been reduced by 18%, but also the conduit that allows Malefic Rapture to do more damage, particularly Focused Malignancy, also has been reduced by 53%. So your single target damage with Malefic Rapture is reduced quite a bit. Now Blizzard did offset this a little bit by buffing the damage of your Agony. So maybe that'll be okay, because right now Warlocks are really good at multi-dotting enemies and spamming Malefic Rapture into everybody, right? The damage they can do to literally everyone is quite good. This overall is going to reduce their cleave capability, multi-target damage capability, but 20% more damage on Agony, I think it's kind of like a band-aid. It doesn't really prevent their damage from falling off, but it does give them some multi-dot. It doesn't make that fall of Malefic Rapture nerf nearly as bad, I guess is the best way to put it. Also, Shadow Embrace, which is a talent, passive, that allows you on Drain Soul or Shadow Bolts or Hunt to apply a Shadow's Embrace on an enemy, where once you Shadow Bolt them 2 times or drain for a little bit, the enemies take 9% more damage from you. You used to be able to spread this on multiple enemies, but now you can only have it on one target. So again, multi-target capability for Affliction Warlocks getting nerfed, allowing them to do more focus damage, but you can't, like, you know, debuff a bunch of people and maintain that buff and do a lot of AoE with Malefic Rapture, which kind of sucks. Overall, this is going to reduce the AoE damage that Affliction Warlocks have. Looking at the raid tier for Chaos and Othrium, they're pretty good in terms of single target. They're pretty good even in a fight like Sledge Fist, where there's a bit of burst. They're really good at any 2-target cleave fight, like Huntsman, for example, where you have a constant second target to debuff. And this is definitely going to be a nerf to Affliction Warlocks in general. They also did change the legendary for them, which is more of a, I think, a PvP change. Sacrilege Strike increases the damage of your corruption by 10% more, and corruption continuously refreshes curses on enemies. This could be interesting though, because of the interaction that it has. Let's say give me a cloak here, give me legs here. So if you put a curse of exhaustion on an enemy and you put corruption, that curse of exhaustion is going to stay on them forever as long as there's a corruption ticking. So you could potentially put a constant curse of tongues or a constant curse of weakness, and maybe if you put it together with absolute corruption, that could be extra dot damage for you to work with a Lego. It's an interesting one that I think could work in PvP, but also would be more annoying in PvP because you having to reapply curse of weakness. As every time enemy dispel it, you have to keep reapplying it over and over. But it's a change, I think, mostly for PvP. It has some uses for PvP where it could be more toxic than it initially was, but for PvE, I don't know. I don't really see a lot of Warlocks running it. In most cases, I see Demonic Synergy as the most popular choice. Could there be potential for Sacrilege with the extra corruption damage together with Absolute Corruption and Rythan and Agony 20% damage increase for a full multi-dot build? Maybe. But Warlocks have been mostly about putting dots, and then Malefic Rapture doing more damage per dot the enemy has. So they kind of just, you know, that's not really the focus of the spec near as much as just having those dots, but rather setting up those dots so Malefic Rapture slaps harder. So overall, yeah, another nerf for yet another spec that's actually a really high performer in Castle Nathria. So that's what it looks like Blizzard's trying to do, nerfing some of the specs that are doing really, really well. With not a lot of buffs, but I feel like there are going to be buffs in the future. We still haven't seen a lot of rogue changes. There was a small one that I haven't covered in this video, but it's more a PvP change. Then there's, you know, we haven't seen hunter changes at all, warrior changes, paladin changes. None of the other classes really got a buff. It looks like Blizzard wanted to kind of kneecap some of the specs that are doing really, really well off the bat as the first change. This isn't going to have any of these guys happy, but maybe all these changes could be reverted. This isn't a final build of PTR at all. This is just the first pass. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about all these updates? What do you think about all these changes? Overall, quite a lot of nerfs, but we'll see where to take it from there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.